Alright, antenna mast replacement for a power antenna on a 92 to 96 Toyota Camry. So this isn't going to be a step-by-step. I'll just show you what I did. I've already done the job, so it would have been too hard to do a step-by-step. So first thing you want to do is take this nut off of here. So the best way to do it, if you don't have the tool, just put a flat tip screwdriver in the groove there, and then use a hammer and tap it, and you'll want to spin counterclockwise like this, and just take that guy off until you can get it to the point where it's loose, and then maybe you can remove it by hand. Then the next step is you remove this cover here that's down below here. It'll be on the side. There's a pin up top here. You just pull it out, then you can pull the cover aside, and then you want to remove these two 10mm nuts right here. And then for electrical, it's just this blue plug right here. And then once you start pulling the antenna out, you'll see where the antenna wire plugs in. Let me see if I can find a picture. Okay, there's a picture of the antenna out. There's the electrical plug right there, the blue plug. And then here's the antenna wire connection. So it just pulls off. You can get it off of there. Probably should have started out by saying, make sure your motor is okay. So when you turn the radio on, you should hear the motor go, make its noise as it's trying to push the antenna up. And then when you turn the car off, you should hear the motor run again as it's pulling the antenna down. But just your antenna's not doing anything. So the problem is that there's a nylon cable inside of there that probably broke. So make sure your antenna does move freely, and you don't have any problems with your motor, or there's no point in doing this. Just replace the entire antenna assembly. Okay, still in this picture. So probably the first thing you want to do is make sure that you can take your antenna out. So after you take the nut off, you see this right here. This is where your antenna, the antenna mast begins, and then the rest of this is part of the assembly. So make sure you can pull the antenna out of here. If you can't, you're probably going to have to do what I did, and that is you have to take this screw off right here, and then you can take this entire metal part. It'll just come right out. And then, let's see if I can find a close-up. All right, so here's a close-up of the, after I pulled the whole mast out of the where the motor was. So once again, here's where the antenna starts, is right here. And so what I had to do is I put the antenna part of it in a vise, and then I used my sledgehammer and a chisel, and I was hitting right on this edge here, and I really had to pound on it pretty hard to get the antenna part to pop out of there, but it will eventually pop out. I mean, I tried twisting it around and tried to pull it off, and I just couldn't get it off there. So yeah, a hammer and a chisel right on this area here. It seemed to work pretty good for me. That one rubber piece you saw earlier, see it's got a key there, and then it's keyed here, so it only goes on one way. So just pull it off when you're ready to do this part of it, assuming you have to do the same thing I had to do. Okay, back to this picture. So next thing you want to do is get the broken nylon out of the inside of here. So there's a 7mm nut right there. Just take him off, and then once you do that, you'll see this. So here's after I took that cover off, the black cover, it just pulls right off. And then this is a washer right here. And then there's another kind of washer here that's you see the raised edge goes here. So the raised edge goes up when you put it back down on there. And then you just take those two things off. This thing will pull right off. You can see the old cable twisted around inside of there. Mine broke off like right in this area. So most of the cable was still wrapped up inside of there. I couldn't move my power antenna at all. I could barely pull it up, and I couldn't push it down. And it was sticking up about, I don't know, a foot out of the thing. So I think if you saw in the first picture, the new one's all the way down. So, and then this is that screw. Like I said, this is the screw right here. You just take it out, and then you can pull out the rest of that. And here's a picture of it with when I pulled the metal, after I took out the screw. You can see where the screw went in. I drew a line with a Sharpie there, so I knew how to, make sure to line that back up when I pushed it back in. Just line it up with the screw hole and push it back in. This piece just pulls right out. This white piece goes in here, over here. Goes right here. This white piece goes here. All right, so putting it back together, I tried a couple different ways, and this is what worked for me. Maybe there's a better way to do it, but what I did is I I left the cover off like this. I took this part of it off, and then I also this white cover right here, it's right here. You can just pop that off, and then there's a gear underneath there, right in this area, right where the motor comes in, and you take him off too. So that's the gear that goes from the motor and then drives this part of it. So and then turn the radio on, wait till the motor stops, and then so you've already put this part back on, right? You've already put this metal piece back in and the screw back in, and you took all the nylon pieces out of there and all that. And then you feed the antenna in. You want with the gear, the teeth face up like this towards the spindle there. And you'll just feed it all the way down in there until it gets inside of here. There's a, right underneath my thumb, where my thumb is right here, there's a black wheel. People are saying you could like push it in there and then let it feed it itself in, like turn the radio off and let it feed in. My problem is I couldn't get it past that little black wheel there. And then, so I kind of started it on there. I used a flat tip screwdriver and pushed it up. And then with that gear out over here, you can twist this by hand and get it to feed in, right? Turn it that way. And then, but then there's, I don't know if you can see right here, there's a like a ridge there, an opening. So the cable just went in and then smacked here. So you can't really do that either. You gotta, I had to feed it up past there. But then, I forget what the next problem is. Let me remember. Okay, now I remember. So at that point, maybe I could have just put everything back together. So make sure you put the gear back, and then and put this plastic cover on, and then put this piece back on, and make sure you put the washers back on, put the black cover off on, and then turn it off. Oh yeah, so that's one thing too. You can't unplug it while it's plugged in. So you turn it on, you let it go all the way up. But the problem is if you unplug it from the power at that point, and then when you plug it back in, it's going to think that you're turning it on for the first time. So it's going to raise the antenna. So I had to leave it plugged into the power the whole time while I was doing this job. But so that might have worked. Maybe then at this point you turn it off, and maybe it'll just go enough that it'll get in there. Because it does, the motor does seem to have like a stall thing. Because when it came in and it hit this part right over here, it did stop right away. I mean, because it fed in and then it hit there and it stopped. So maybe, maybe it's not so critical the length of your cable. I don't know. What I ended up doing was I fed it in by hand, and then I twisted this wheel until I got the antenna to seat all the way. So I seated the antenna. So push the antenna all the way up, as in full extension, and then I seated it till the little plastic piece fit into there. And let's go back to the other picture. Okay, so that meant there was a bunch of cable hanging out. The cable came out to like maybe here or something like that. And so then I just fed the cable into the spool and then just turned it like this, just feeding it in as though it was winding it up. And you just feed it in, it'll automatically feed up. And then you just keep turning, and then put it over the bolt there, and then push it down, put your washer, put this the lifted washer, put that washer, and then put the black cover back on, and then screw it down, and then you can turn the radio off, and then it'll just pull the antenna all the way in, and then you're done. So that was it. That's how I did it, and it worked, but it took me a while. This actually was a pretty long job. Hopefully this helps you. Because now you know what my secret, how I did it, and so hopefully that'll go a lot faster. I mean, if I was to do it again, it would be a lot faster, because now I know what to do. But you could try that other trick, maybe just kind of get it in there enough, and then just hopefully, because it does seem like the motor, it runs for quite a while, and maybe it's just waiting to hit a stall condition, then it just stops. So, all right, hopefully that helped, and if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. So this was the antenna cable I bought. Will it focus? Yeah, so it's the Autotecnica TY133888, and at Rock Auto it's $10.50. So it worked really well. I'm happy with it. The nylon seems pretty flexible. It went in really easy. So the instructions on there, I don't know, maybe I didn't really use them at all. So I just go by what I did. Okay, that's it. Bye. Okay, one more, very last thing. I forgot to mention my new radio came with a remote control, little infrared remote control, and I could turn it on and off like that. So I dropped the two back seats so that I could see the radio from inside the trunk, and then I was able to turn the radio on and off using the remote control. So I was able to do it by myself. I didn't need a helper because especially when um, you get the antenna all back together, remember the antenna is going to be fully extended when you feed it back in. So you want to be able to turn it off, and then there's a little bit of delay after you turn it off, and then it'll start retracting the antenna. So, um, unless you could support it some way, because you don't want that antenna to snag on anything as it's pulling back in. So, all right. One thing I should have mentioned too was when you go to put it back in, I would put the nut in first. Where is it? On the top here. So I would put him in first. Um, do the same thing. You can kind of screw it in by hand, then just use your screwdriver and turn it that way, knock it back in, get it real tight. You'll see how your rubber here goes, right? The big side towards the outside of the car and whatnot. And then, actually, before you do that, sorry, just start those 10 millimeter bolts here. So first stick it up through there, start the 10 millimeter, leave them loose, and then tighten that nut down on the top. And then once you're done with that, then tighten the 10 millimeters down. You'll probably want to plug your antenna in first, sorry. So you can plug your antenna in, your electrical in, then start the 10 millimeters, then do the nut on the top, and then tighten him all the way down, and then tighten these guys down. And then you're done. Okay.